Hi friends, welcome back to my channel, and in today's video we're going to go over all of the books that I read in 2024. First, we're going to start off with some analytics for the year. So my reading goal for 2024 was 30 books because I read 29 last year, and I ended up reading 66 books. We have 48 romance, 14 fantasy, 3 mystery thriller, and 1 nonfiction. My average rating was 4.1 stars, and I read a total of 28,351 pages. I'm so happy with how many books I read. I was genuinely so surprised. I feel like filming definitely helped me get up my reading, which I'm so thankful for. Also, it's been 1 year since I started this channel, and I am so happy to be here. I am so happy that you guys are here watching, and I hope we have a great 2025. So, let's get into the books. So, the first book I read this year was The Serpent and the Wings of the Night by Carissa Broadbent. I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it a 5-star. I don't exactly remember everything that happened in this book, but it was vampires, high-stake fantasy, and I had a really good time reading this book. It is in one of my very first videos that I posted, and I got emotionally invested in the characters, and I'm excited to read the next book in this series, which I do own, but I just haven't gotten into it yet, but it was very good. Then I started the Magnolia Park series, and I went through and read almost all of them. So I started with Magnolia Parks, and I read this book and absolutely fell in love with the characters and the story and the romance. I annotated it. This book did great things, and it started my obsession with Magnolia Parks, and I am so unbelievably happy that I picked up this book this year. I also ended up giving this book a 5-star, which goes for the rest of the series as well. So then we have Daisy Hates, which is the second book in the Magnolia Park series. I absolutely fell in love with this book as well. I love all the main characters. I specifically fell in love with Julian Hates, and I don't go a day without thinking about that man. Then we also have Magnolia Parks, The Long Way Home, and yet again, another 5-star. This entire series gets 5 stars from me. I just adore these characters. I also then read Daisy Hates, The Great Undoing, and this book was my undoing. It absolutely destroyed me. I would literally give anything to read these books for the first time again. After I finished Magnolia Parks, I needed a little palate cleanser because the end of The Great Undoing was really heavy, and those books took an emotional toll on me. So I ended up picking up The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And this was the first Ali Hazelwood book that I read, and I really enjoyed it. It was also one of the first books I read that was in third person in a while, and I thought it was going to be very jarring, but it wasn't. These characters were so fun. It was a perfect rom-com, and it was definitely the palate cleanser I needed. So then after The Love Hypothesis, I ended up picking up The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and this book had been sitting on my TBR for months, maybe a year, and when I finally picked it up, I absolutely fell in love with this book. I was like, why haven't I picked this up before? I was actually mad at myself for not reading it sooner. It's a Grumpy Sunshine. It's also part of a trilogy that follows 3 brothers. So this follows the first brother, Rowan, and his significant other, Zara. And I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star. And then I picked up Behind the Net by Stephanie Archer. This was the first book in the Vancouver Storm series. I love a good hockey romance. They're always fun and a good time. I actually really enjoyed that book. I don't exactly remember the specifics, but I really did have a good time. I ended up giving that book a 4.25 star. And then I read Shatter Me. I had heard so many people talking about this series, and I know everybody loves this series, so I wanted to give it a shot. And I did enjoy it. I had a good time. I have a couple annotations. I ended up giving it a 3.5 star, which I think I might actually bump up to a 4 star. From what I remember, I did really enjoy this book. I flew through it. It didn't take me much time. I love a dystopian book, and I hope to continue the series this year. And then I read Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera, and this was a book of the month book. I honestly probably never would have picked this book up if it wasn't, but I really, really enjoyed this book. The mystery was good. Also, the audiobook for this book was so good. I highly, highly recommend. I was going back and forth between the two, and it was really good. Because in this book, you have the main character's point of view, but then you also have a podcast that's going on that is aiding in solving the mystery. I ended up giving this book a 4 star. And then I read Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. This is the first book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and I adored this book. I loved both the main characters. I loved the female main character. She has ADHD, and so reading things from her perspective really made me feel seen. I saw a lot of myself in her, and the male main character, what's his, Brooks? Yes. Absolutely loved him, how he was there for her. It was just a really cute cowboy romance, and I will always love a cowboy romance. I ended up giving this book a 4 star. I highly recommend. Highly recommend. I picked up Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and I loved it. I absolutely adored this book. I was a little bit late to the Fourth Wing train, and I knew everybody was obsessed with it and was loving it, and I was very skeptical going into it because of all the hype that it had surrounding it, but I was not disappointed at all. I actually adored this book so much. Xaden, I loved him. Violet as a main character was also really good, and I ended up giving this book a 5 star. And then I reread Ricochet by Kristen Becker Ritchie. This is the second book in the Addicted series, and I tabbed the heck out of it because I adore this series. It is one of my 6-star series, and so getting back into this world and reading about my favorite characters was such a good time. Highly recommend. I ended up giving it a 5 star. And then I read The Rulebook by Sarah Adams. This is a football romance. It is technically the second book after the cheat sheet, and it was just a cute, cheesy rom-com. I'm pretty sure it was fake marriage. I really enjoyed this book. It was very short, sweet, no complaints, and I ended up giving it a 4 star. And then I read Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher. This is the second book in the Dreamland Billionaire series, and I enjoyed this book. This wasn't my favorite out of the 3. I believe that the first book was my favorite, but I had a good time. I don't think I had any real complaints besides I hate a third act breakup, but most romance books are going to have a third act breakup of some sort. So what can you do? I ended up giving this book a 4.25 star. And then I picked up Powerless by Lauren Roberts, and also one of those books that I knew had such big hype around it and was a little bit nervous going into it, but I loved it. I loved the characters. I loved the enemies to lovers. The banter ate. It was so good. Peyton and Kai together, absolutely adore them. The high stakes, everything. It was just so good for me. Yeah, I ended up giving it a 5 star. And then I read Funny Story by Emily Henry. In April, all I look forward to is reading a new Emily Henry book, and this one did not disappoint. I loved Daphne and, why can't I think of his name? Daphne and Miles. Oh my god. Holy crap. I loved Daphne and Miles so much. The way that their relationship came together. Also, Miles is such a acts of service king, and I adore that in a book. Emily Henry, she just doesn't miss for me, and I loved it. I also ended up giving this book a 5-star. And then I read, wow, I had a lot of 5 stars in a row. It was actually a really good reading year for me. Then I read Wild Love by Elsie Silver. Elsie Silver is one of those authors. She's an auto-buy author. Every book that I've read by her, I have absolutely loved, and this book was no different. Ford Grant is the blueprint for a man. I loved him so much. The relationship between these two characters, I love when characters have a long history with each other, and these two have known each other for most of their lives, and seeing that chemistry really plays throughout the book with the pining, and also the way that there's a certain way that they show the past of these two together, and it's done really, really well. Next we have Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is a novella in the Powerless series, and I absolutely adored this. Adina and Mac's little love story was so cute. This book made me sob like no other. It was so well written. I would have loved a whole entire book about, like, a whole entire book series about these two. I adored it. Yeah, I actually ended up giving this little novella a 5-star as well. Okay. And then I listened to the audiobook of I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, and this was so good. I highly recommend the audiobook because she narrates it, and hearing her life experiences through her was so amazing. I feel like you truly get the emotion and what was really going on. And also it was just such a wild thing to hear about, all of her struggles and everything that she had gone through, especially while being on such a beloved show that I spent my entire childhood watching. Yeah, it was really good. I didn't rate this book because it's her life, and who am I to judge somebody's life? And then I read The Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This was the last book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. I enjoyed this book. It wasn't my favorite out of the 3. I think this technically, I don't know where it falls in my rankings, but I read it during a 24-hour readathon, and I feel like that probably has something to do with my rating, but it was also the longest one. I liked the characters. I liked the mailman character as well, just because he has a lot of struggles and you see him work through that and work through it in order to get the girl and to live up to what she wants from him, I guess, in a way, like to be a better man for her, and that is always appreciated. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star. And then I read Swift and Saddled by Lila Sage. This is the second book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and I didn't necessarily love this one as much as I loved the first one. It was a little bit too insta-lovey for me. I didn't love the female main character, but the male main character was, like, so cute. He would do anything for this girl, and it was just, it was cute, but I feel like there wasn't enough there for me to really fall in love with these characters. So I ended up giving this book a 3-star. And then we have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is the first book in the Part of Your World Interconnected Standalone series. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I read it. I know people love Abby Jimenez, and so I decided to give it a shot. And I was thoroughly surprised and happy with this book. It was very cute. I have a lot of annotations in this book. The male main character was just so, like, hopeful and very glass half full, whereas the female main character was very glass half empty. I just really enjoyed it. Abby Jimenez just has such a way with words. I will read anything that she writes. It was so good. And then I read Addicted for Now, which is the third book in the Addicted series. I was reading it to annotate it, but I see that I did not annotate it as much as I thought I was going to. But yet again, I adore this series. It's so good. And it was a reread, so I ended up giving it 5 stars, like I did the very first time I read it. And then we have Things We Never Got Over, which is the first book in the Knockabout series. And this was another series that I know that people absolutely adored, so I wanted to give it a shot. And I really enjoyed this book. It's pretty thick, and I thought it was going to take me so long and that I was going to not like it as much as I did. But it actually flew. And I had an amazing time reading this. I loved the characters. The conflict within the book was really good. And I loved the mailman character. He was so good. I loved Knox. And I hope to continue this series and finish this series this year. I have the other 2 books. I just haven't gotten to them yet. And then I read King of Wrath by Anna Huang. This is the first book in the Kings of Sin series. And this was about Dante and Vivian. I think I don't really remember, if we're being so honest. I did read it in a video, I believe, so my thoughts will be there and I'll try to link it somewhere. I enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed it, at least. And I ended up giving it a 4.25 star. Okay, and then I read Mile High by Liz Tomford. Well, I kind of read Mile High by Liz Tomford. I ended up DNFing that book. I did not love the mailman character. There was something about it, the way he was speaking about women, the way he was speaking about her. I don't know. I did not like it. So I ended up DNFing it. And that's that. And then I read Magnolia Park's Into the Dark. This is the last book in the Magnolia Park series. And this book destroyed me. Absolutely wrecked me emotionally. But I loved it so much. This was the last book in Magnolia and BJ's perspective, so it was really sad saying goodbye to these 2 characters. The ending was so good, and I feel like it was a good closure on their story, and I ended up giving it 5 stars. And then I ended up reading Reckless by Lauren Roberts. This is the second book in the Powerless series, and I was so excited for this book to come out. And I had a really good time reading it. The banter still ate. The chemistry between the 2 characters was so good. I gave it a 5 star when I read it, but I think I was just really caught up in the love confession that takes place in this book. Thinking back on it now, I wouldn't necessarily give it a 5 star. I would give it like a 4.5. But overall, I love these characters, and I'm so excited for Fearless to come out and see how that plays out and see how this story ends. And then I read The Fake Out by Stephanie Archer, which is the second book in the Vancouver Storm series, and I absolutely loved that book. The relationship between those 2 characters was so cute. I adored them so much. The mailman character, Rory, love him. He's such a golden retriever, and their banter, their chemistry, everything was just so good. Their kind of dislike to lovers was so good. Overall, loved that book. Ended up giving it a 4.5 star. And then I read Dishonestly Yours by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the first book in their new series, and I had to give it a go because of how much I love the Addicted series. This is about like a con family, like the family's all con artists, and the 2 girls move to a different town to try to live a normal life. And I enjoyed it. It was good. I didn't absolutely love it like I love the Addicted series. I feel like that is just a completely different, it's a whole different kind of love. But it was good, and I will continue this series. I ended up giving it a 4 star. Okay, and then I read King of Pride by Anna Huang, and this is the second book in the King of Sin series, and I liked this book. I think I even liked it more than I liked King of Wrath. I loved Kai. I loved the little smarty pants that he is. This book was very spicy, so if you do not like spicy books, maybe don't pick this up. The relationship between these 2 characters was so good. Also, I think I saw a lot of myself in the female main character, and so it did great things for me. I also gave this book a 4.25 star. And then I read Hopeless by Elsie Silver, which was the last book in the Chestnut Spring series, which hurt my heart to say goodbye to these characters and to this series. I absolutely love the Chestnut Spring series. It is one of my 6-star series. And this one was about the last brother, Beau, and his girl, Bailey. I just loved it. The chemistry between those two characters was immaculate. Especially reading the other books, you see Beau throughout them, so seeing him in his own book was just such a treat. And seeing the rest of the family and the couples and the found family that take place in this series was amazing. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star. And then I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, which is the second book in the Part of Your World Interconnected Standalone, and I loved this book. This book was so good. Brianna and Jacob are an unmatched couple. I saw a lot of myself in the male character Jacob because he struggles with anxiety and all the things that come with it, and the relationship that these two have and the comfortability, vulnerability, and the way that they understand each other, and Brianna's understanding of Jacob and how he functions and how to make him feel more comfortable when he would typically be really anxious about something. Fabulous. Him understanding her hesitations on relationships and men in general. It was so good. I ended up giving this book a 4.75 star. And then I read Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This was the first Annabelle Monaghan book that I had read, and it is so good. I really enjoyed it. She has such a way with words. I have annotated it so much, and it was just a really cute summery read, but it was also just written so well. I loved her writing in this book. It did really good things for me. I couldn't relate to things that much, but I was very much emotionally invested in these characters. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star. And I want to read more Annabelle Monaghan this upcoming year. And then I read To Sir with Love by Lauren Lane. And this book was so cutie. If you're looking for like a little cheesy rom-com, this one is definitely for you. It reminded me of a plot point in one of my favorite shows, Heartland. And this girl ends up meeting this guy in a blind dating app, and it turns out that he's actually her rival, but she doesn't know it yet. And it was so cute, so cheesy. It's like a perfect palate cleanser book if you need one, and I highly recommend. I ended up giving this book a 4.75 star. That's how much I enjoyed it. And then I read A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first book in the ACOTAR series. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. This book actually took me like 2 years to finally finish. For some reason, I just could not get into it. It wasn't necessarily my favorite, but I pushed through because I heard the rest of the series was so good. So I pushed through, I read it, I ended up giving it a 3.5 star. And then I read Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh, and I picked up this book and was instantly captivated by the couple, the story, everything that was going on. I ate this book up. The relationship between Johnny and Shannon was so cute and so perfect. I absolutely adored it. Also, this book emotionally ruined me, as well as Keeping 13, which I read directly after reading this, because if you've read Binding 13, you know once you hit the end of the book, you instantly just have to pick up Keeping 13 because you are left on such a crazy cliffhanger. And I adored it. I gave both of them 5 stars. And then I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is the third book in the Part of Your World Interconnected Standalone series. And this book was so good. It was so unbelievably good. I adored it. I annotated the heck out of it. I would reread this book 100%. It was so good. The relationship between the two characters, the understanding, everything. Abby Jimenez, her writing is just so good. I can't even explain to you. You just need to read it, please. I ended up giving this book a 4.75 star as well. And I am so excited for Say You'll Remember Me to come out this year. And then I read The Right Move by Liz Tomford, which is the second book in the Windy City series. As I said, I did not like Mile High. I ended up DNFing it. But I read The Right Move and fell in love with those characters. There's just something about reading a book and having it explain how you feel when you can't put the thoughts into words yourself. And that's what that book was for me, especially with Indy being such a bookworm. So good. Also, her opening Ryan up and becoming, like, having him become vulnerable and making him allow people into his life was such a treat, and I loved it so much. Also, it's the beginning of the found family within the Windy City series, which is one of my favorite aspects within the entire story. And then I read Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in her Rose Hill series, which is a single dad series, and this book follows West and Skylar, who is a celebrity. She's a pop star, and she comes to this town to start working on a new album, and she runs into West and they hit it off. And this book was so good. If you like single dads, West is the dad. He is the dad of all dads. I loved him. Seeing him with his children, adorable. Also, whenever there were kids in books, makes me so happy, and seeing the relationship between the child and the significant other that comes into the book is always so good. It makes the story so much better. I always just enjoy them more for some reason. And I ended up giving this book a 4-star. It wasn't necessarily my favorite because Ford exists, but West really sits up there. I love him. Oh my god, there's so many books left. Fuck. And then I read Caught Up by Liz Tomford, which is the third book in the Windy City series, and it is about Kai and Miller. So it is a baseball romance, and this was the first baseball romance I've ever read, and I absolutely loved that book. Kai Rhodes, Please Marry Me. I loved that man so much. His relationship with Miller was so cute, and it was actually such an emotional read when it comes to like a family dynamic, because Kai is a single dad and he brings Miller in to help take care of his kid while he's on the road, and the parallels between Kai and Miller's life with the son and Miller's family life growing up was just so good, and it gives you a different perspective on adulting and on parenting and being like a young parent, because you're seeing that like parents are also just doing this for the first time. They're doing life for the first time, and seeing it through their perspective and their eyes was just so beautiful. Yet again, it was another one of those things where it's like seeing another person interact with the child that's not necessarily theirs. Forming that relationship is just so heartwarming and endearing to witness, and I absolutely loved it. It was my 5-star of the Windy City series. And then I read Enemies, and I thought this was going to be a fun football romance, and that is just not what this was. I did not really love this book. I thought it was just going to be fun, but it was pretty deep and dives a lot into the main character's life and all the things that she has gone through, and she has had quite the hard life. It was not lighthearted whatsoever, and the relationship was kind of more on a back burner, if you could even call it a relationship. It was supposed to be like a friends to lovers or childhood friends to lovers, but it kind of wrapped up too quickly at the end. You don't get a lot of the male main character. I was looking for his point of view, and you get like 1 or 2 chapters of him at the very end of the book, but it wasn't enough for me to feel connected to his character or to feel their relationship in any way. It was mainly just like a physical relationship, which is not usually my favorite. And then I read The Wingman by Stephanie Archer, which is the third book in the Vancouver Storm series, and I was really looking forward to that book. It was a Friends to Lovers, which was quite cute, but honestly, it was exactly what you would expect from a Friends to Lovers. I feel like there wasn't anything groundbreaking within it. I still had a really good time reading it. It was still a good book. It just wasn't necessarily my favorite, and it didn't necessarily meet the expectations for what I thought it was going to be, and so I ended up giving it a 3.5 star. And then I read A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the ACOTAR series, and I loved this book. It was really, really good. People did say that Asimov is their favorite out of the ACOTAR series, and I can definitely see why. I had a really good time. I fell in love with Reese in this book, and the found family that takes place in this book and in the next one was so good. I really fell in love with these characters, and learning the politics of the world and the series, all of it was just so good. I very much enjoyed it, and I was very happy that I pushed through ACOTAR to be able to get to this book. I ended up giving it a 4.5 star. And then I read Pucked by Helena Hunting, and one of the employees at Barnes recommended me this book. Also, the sprayed edges were just so cute. Recommended this book for me, and honestly, it's a cute, cheesy hockey romance, and that is the plot. Like, it's just a cheesy, fun, short and sweet, no brain power, just kind of go along with the story kind of book. And I had a good time. I didn't love it. It wasn't my favorite thing in the entire world, but it was not a bad book at any means. I don't have any complaints. It was just a hockey romance. I ended up giving it 3 stars. And then I read Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher, and this is the first book in the Lakefront Billionaire series. And honestly, I don't remember too much about this book, but I do remember really enjoying it. I had a good time while reading it. I heard a lot of people really, really, really loved this book and the next book in the series, which I have yet to get to, but I plan on doing so this year. But I had a good time. I have no complaints. I ended up giving it a 4 star. And then I read none other than Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, and was so good. I loved it. The ending of this book gave me heart palpitations. I sat with my jaw dropped for like 5 to 10 minutes. I was in awe of the ending of this book, and I cannot wait until Onyx Storm comes out later this month. And yeah, I ended up giving it, I ended up giving it a 5 star. And then I read Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry. This is the first book in the Eden series. I enjoyed this book. It was okay. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that I was like, oh my god, this is the best thing ever. Like, it was just okay. And I ended up giving it a 3 star. Mind you, I was also in a reading slump when I read this book, so who knows if that would be my reaction to it now. And then I read A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. This is the third book in the ACOTAR series, and I really enjoyed this book, getting into the politics of the world in Prithian, the war that went on. This book also broke my heart a little bit. I cried. I had a great time. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star, I believe. Then I read Consider Me by Becca Mack, which is a hockey romance series, and I really enjoyed that book. You know what you're gonna get when you read a hockey romance, and I was just expecting to enjoy the book. Yet again, this was another recommendation from a Barnes employee, and she had been telling me to read this book for so long, and I finally picked it up, and I had a great time, genuinely. And I will continue the series. I've read the first and second book so far. The first book was so good. The relationship between the two characters. I also just loved the male main character. He was so funny and loud and arrogant, and I just loved him. And I loved her for putting up with him as well. and I ended up giving that book a 4-star. Then I read Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver. I had heard so many people talking about this book that I had to check it out. It was also a book of the month book, so I had to just do it while it was there. Otherwise, I mean, yeah, I still would have picked it up at some point, but this kind of forced me to read it, and I really enjoyed it. It was a very spicy book, but I loved the concept of the book. I love the serial killers falling in love, going out together and killing. Like, it was just cute. Not that murdering is cute, but like their relationship was cute, and their understanding of each other and why they do the things that they do. It was also just really funny. The situations that they find themselves in were quite comical. Also, the audiobook of this is really good, especially listening to what's his name? Rowan? Is his name Rowan too? Especially listening to Rowan's voice, because he's Irish, and something about it did really good things for my brain. I ended up giving this book a 4-star. And then I read Play With Me by Becca Mack, which is the second book in the Play for Keeps series, and I really enjoyed it. It was best friend's sister, or brother's best friend, whichever way you want to put it. Yet again, hockey romance, super cute. The relationship between the two characters was adorable, and the female main character kind of finding her place within the group through her relationship with the guy and learning how to be intimate with somebody again was just super cute. And I ended up giving it a 4-star as well. Then I read Lost and Lassoed by Lila Sage. This is the third book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series, and I was looking forward to this book so much because of the crumbs that you see of Teddy and Gus in the other books, and their banter was so good. Getting into this book, I was really excited. I really enjoyed this book. I feel like once they kind of got together, we lost a little bit of the banter, which I was kind of upset about. But overall, the relationship between these two characters and the understanding between them, with the fact that they are both caregivers and people look to them to kind of take care of them. Also, Gus is a single dad. This is kind of like a single dad nanny romance. Also, best friend's brother. And it was just really cute. I loved these two together. And I was looking for a little bit more out of their relationship. I honestly just wanted this book to be a little bit longer to get more of them. I ended up giving this book a 3.5 star. I do think that the first book in the series is still my favorite. And then I had another reread, which was Kiss the Sky by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is one of my favorite books of all time. The couple in this book, Rose and Connor, are everything to me. They are my favorite couple ever. And Rose Calloway is bae. Literally, me and Rose Calloway, I have never felt a character more in my life than I have Rose. I feel like our mentals are in the same place, and I just love the way that these two love each other. You see her, a girl who is not trusting of men, learn how to trust this one man because of everything he brings to the table. There's just nobody like Connor Cobalt, and the way he understands Rose and knows how to make her feel comfortable and understood, and I don't know, just everything. They are just the perfect couple, and I adore this book so much. I would give this book a 6 star if I could, but it is my 5-star read. And then I read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This book is just fall vibes. All the fall vibes you could need are right here in this book. I enjoyed it. It wasn't anything groundbreaking. If you like Gilmore Girls, you would absolutely love this book and the books that follow in this series. So yeah, I ended up giving this book a 3-star because it's just straight up vibes. And then I read The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, which is a YA mystery series. This is the first book, and I am not a big thriller mystery girly, but this book really did it for me. I absolutely tore through this book. I read it in a day, and I was very, very thoroughly surprised with how much I enjoyed this, and I am so looking forward to continuing this series this year. I ended up giving this book a 4-star. And then I read Play Along by Liz Tomford, which is the 4th book in the Windy City series. It follows the brother of the guy from Caught Up and an athletic trainer within their team. And it is a fake marriage, and it is so cute. Isaiah Rhodes is such a golden retriever boy. He is so cutie and would literally do anything for this girl, and it makes my heart so happy. I absolutely adored them and their relationship. It was just so cute. I highly recommend. I ended up giving that book a 4.75 star. And then I read Normal People by Sally Rooney, which I wanted to love this book so much, but for some reason it just did not hit for me. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was the format of the book, the writing style. I don't know, but it wasn't necessarily my favorite book ever, and I ended up giving it a 3-star. Next we had The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I was thoroughly surprised with this book. I knew a lot of people loved this book and the magical realism that takes place in it. I didn't know if it was necessarily going to be my favorite book ever, but I actually ended up giving this a 5-star. I loved the characters in this book, and I love the way that everything just kind of intertwined in the most perfect way. It was written so well. Also, just Ashley Poston's writing was so good. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. Then I read Assistant to the Villain. This is another book that I had heard so much about and a lot of really good things about. I had actually bought it when it had come out and planned on reading it and just never got to it. So when I finally did, I absolutely loved it. I listened to most of it because it did take me a little bit to get into, but once I got into it, I absolutely adored it, and I'm so looking forward to reading, what is it called? The Apprentice to the Villain. I'm very much looking forward to reading that sometime soon. I ended up giving this book a 4-star. And then I also read Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. This was my first Tessa Bailey book, and it was a holiday book, and I actually had a really good time. I also read that book in one day. It was really cute. It was just what you would expect from a holiday romance. I don't have any complaints about it, and I don't have many thoughts. I just remember it being very cute and having a good time reading it. And I would like to pick up another Tessa Bailey book at some point and see what her other romances are like. I ended up giving it a 3.5 star. And then I picked up Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. People talk about this book all the time and love this book, and so I finally decided to give it a shot, and I actually really enjoyed it. I loved the writing style of this book. I feel like there was a lot of hard-hitting quotes in this book that I really enjoyed. Like, I was reading it and highlighting it, just being like, how are you putting my thoughts into words? Because I could never. And I really appreciated that. Also, the relationship between the two main characters, the magical typewriters, everything, it was just very cute. And I ended up giving this book a 4-star. And then we have A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 4th book in the ACOTAR series, and I enjoyed it. It was cute, sweet. I also read it in December, so it was during the winter solstice, and it was a cute wrap-up book for Reese and Feyre's story, because I believe the next book is out of Cassian and Nesta's point of views, I think. I enjoyed it. It wasn't anything groundbreaking because the war, everything, like, this is just them cleaning up and getting back to life. And I ended up giving it a 4-star. And the last book that I read for the year was The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ali Carter. A lot of people compare it to Knives Out, which I personally have not watched Knives Out, but I really enjoyed that story, so I feel like maybe I'll watch it soon and see what everybody's talking about. But overall, loved it. It was such a cute little romance, but also, like, the mystery aspect was good. I also listened to most of it on Audible. The audiobook was super good. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend. I also probably wouldn't have picked up the book if it wasn't for Book of the Month, so thank you, Book of the Month. Love you. I give it a 4.25 star. So those were all the books that I read, a total of 66 books. And I'm very excited to see what this year holds for me and my reading, and see what books we get up into. If you have any recommendations for me, leave them down below and I will check them out and hopefully read some of them for you guys. And yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to come hang out with me again, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends.